Imagine, like, the weight of a brand new nation, right? And it's all on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You've led this revolution. People are calling you a hero. Some are even, like, whispering the word king.
Oh, wow.
That was George Washington's reality. And the choices he made, well, according to these articles, they're choices we might need to think about today, especially with 2024 right around the corner.
Yeah, it's really something. We're looking at 3 articles today, one from The Atlantic, one from Michael McFall's Substack, and then a piece from Time.
Okay.
And they all kind of circle this idea, this election. It's not just about policies. It's about, like, the core stuff, the character, the values, the foundation of American democracy, the stuff Washington fought so hard for.
Okay, so let's break it down. The Atlantic piece really brings Washington to life. What got me was how he resisted power. The guy didn't want a crown. He could easily just take it over, especially during this thing called the Newburgh Conspiracy.
Ah, the Newburgh Conspiracy. So after the Revolution, right, the Continental Army, they were not happy. They hadn't been paid.
Oh.
And there was talk about using force to get what they were owed.
Wow.
Some even thought Washington, who was super popular with the troops, should lead the charge. Basically, stage a military coup.
So they were asking him to be king.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
But Washington, and this surprised everyone, he shut it down.
He did.
Gave this speech, super famous now, where he reminds them what they fought for. He said, true leadership is about serving, not ruling. It was a defining moment for him, for America. He chose citizen over Caesar,
Which makes the contrast with Trump in this article even more intense. The piece says Trump seems to put loyalty to him above the Constitution.
And that's especially worrisome when you look at Trump and the military. Like the Atlantic article, it talks about how during the 2020 protests, Trump wanted to use the military against Americans. He supposedly said things like, just shoot them. It's so different from Washington, who was careful, made sure his troops didn't hurt civilians, even those still loyal to the British crown.
That's chilling. Washington knew the military was there to protect the country, not be a weapon against his people. He had a similar thing with the Whiskey Rebellion, farmers protesting attacks.
Right.
He led troops to stop it, but then used pardons, showed mercy after.
Exactly. Upholding the law, but understanding forgiveness, reconciliation, especially after such division, which, well, based on his actions, Trump doesn't seem to get that.
And this is where the Time article about the COVID tests Trump sent to Putin comes in, right? It seems like a small thing, but
it's a big deal. Americans are desperate for tests, and Trump's sending them to a leader who, let's be real, has worked against the U.S.
it wasn't just the tests. The Atlantic article says Trump praised Putin's leadership, even defended him after Ukraine.
And this is where Michael McFall's piece is so important. He says Trump's admiration for Putin, it's not just some abstract thing. It could be really bad if Trump gets back in power in 2024. We could abandon Ukraine, pressure Zelensky to appease Putin.
Yeah.
It's dangerous, like, historically.
It doesn't end well.
Exactly. And it's bigger than Ukraine, a second Trump term. What would that say to other dictators, especially those looking at Taiwan? This is global stability we're talking about, the future of democracy itself.
It's honestly kind of scary to think about. It makes you wonder, like, what would Washington even think of all this? He seemed to have such a clear vision for America, for the leadership it needed.
You're right. And that leadership thing, the character part, that's huge in the Atlantic article when they compare Washington and Trump. One thing that stuck out, they talked about Washington's stoicism, this incredible self-control. This is a guy who just led a revolution. He could have been so angry, resentful, wanting revenge, but he wasn't. He stayed calm, committed to logic, to thinking things through, even under pressure.
The article mentioned he was famous for controlling his emotions, even during battles, like he had ice water in his veins.
And it wasn't just acting. It was a deep commitment to putting duty first before personal gain. Washington understood a leader's decisions. They have a ripple effect. He didn't let his ego, his feelings, mess with his judgment. So different from today with, like, the impulsiveness and the not taking responsibility.
Well, and the article quotes Trump as saying, I don't take responsibility at all, right?
Yeah.
Hard to picture Washington saying that. Didn't he actually admit his own flaws, like in his farewell address?
He did. Washington, he believed in humility, in realizing no leader is perfect. He surrounded himself with good advisors, was open to different opinions. That willingness to listen, to say he was wrong sometimes, that was key to his leadership. And it's something McFall says is vital for a healthy democracy. You got to be able to disagree, but in a respectful way, and accept the outcome even if you don't like it.
Which makes me think about what McFall said about respecting election results. It's like the opposite is happening now. Trump, Vance, they've said they might not accept the 2024 results unless they win. That's a dangerous game. It's like a threat to that peaceful transfer of power that Washington worked so hard to create.
It is dangerous. Remember, Washington could have held on to power. He was popular. People wanted him to be president forever, basically. But he knew that peaceful transition was crucial, even if it meant someone he disagreed with took over. He chose the country over his own ambition.
And we've seen that commitment throughout history, right? The article mentions Jimmy Carter taking responsibility for the hostage crisis, JFK owning up to the Bay of Pigs, even Gerald Ford pardoning Nixon so the country could move on. And that probably cost Ford the election.
Exactly. Those leaders, they got it. Their choices, they had consequences, not just for them, but for everyone. They put the country first. And it went beyond Democrat or Republican. It was about protecting American democracy.
It makes you realize how fragile it all is, especially with someone willing to use it, to undermine it for their own benefit. I mean, look at January 6th. The article talks about Trump not accepting 2020, him calling the January 6th rioters patriots. It's like he'd rather have chaos, violence, just to stay in power.
Yeah, and that's the complete opposite of Washington. He led a revolution against a tyrant. But he knew power, even in the hands of the people, can be dangerous if there's no control. He wouldn't have seen those rioters as patriots. He would have seen a threat to everything he fought to build.
It makes you wonder, are those norms, those traditions Washington started, are they enough to handle this kind of thing?
That's the big question, right? 2024, it's not just picking a president. It's about what kind of country we want. Do we want someone like Washington, selfless, with integrity, someone who cares about everyone? Or do we risk it all for someone who just cares about themselves?
In McFall's piece, he says it's not just America, right? Like a world where America is weaker, more divided, that's dangerous for everyone.
Absolutely. Washington, in his farewell address, he warned about getting too involved with other countries, about the importance of being united at home. He knew a strong America, a united America, that was key to keeping things peaceful here and everywhere else. And McFall, it's like he's saying the same thing, another Trump term. It could make those dictators like Putin even bolder, could lead to, more conflict, more instability all over.
So where does that leave us? We've been talking about Washington's fears, what's going on in politics today, and what's at stake in this election. It's a lot.
It really is. But the main thing, I think, is being informed, being good citizens. Washington, he thought that was crucial for democracy to work. People need to be involved, understand what's going on, hold their leaders accountable.
And that starts with knowing our history, right? Seeing how the stuff Washington dealt with is still relevant.
Exactly. The more we get the past, the better we can deal with the present and create the future we want.
It's like Washington is talking to us right now through these articles, warning us about how fragile democracy is, how we got to protect it.
You could say that. And that's pretty powerful to think about as we get closer to this election. Every choice we make now, it's going to echo for generations.
Wow. That's something else. So anyone listening, if any of this got you thinking, go read these articles. Links are in the show notes.
Yeah, you never know. You might find some surprising connections, some new insights.
Like they say, history repeats itself. By learning from Washington's choices, maybe we can make better ones ourselves.
Because really, Washington's legacy, America's legacy, it's not set in stone. We write it every day with the decisions we make.
And on that note, that's a wrap on our deep dive.